Hello, we are the fraud accountants tasked with analyzing Julius cookies to determine if there's any fraud analysis going on within this company. The agenda for today is we're going to be taking a look at the overall audit findings that we found while looking around for fraudulent activity, going to cover the biggest issues that we determined out of those things, and any recommendations that we have for the future for this company to either avoid fraud or stop it completely. So, with the first set of overall findings is involved with the accounts payable section of Julia's Cookies. There was four tests that we decided to run, starting off with the kickback test. The kickback test is a test to determine if there is an employee that is approving all the payments to one specific vendor. In this case, we found the employee Monica Sullivan approving all of the payments to Sue Spices. As you can see, there's 76 approved payments. The problem with this is that this could lead to fraudulent vendor kickbacks, as this certain employee could be providing kickbacks through the payments or just extra payments to these vendors by approving all of them with no oversight going on. The second test that we did was the shell company test. This was to determine if there was a one of these vendors was a shell company, and by that meaning that the vendor does not do business with anyone else but our company, which could indicate fraud or could indicate that an employee in the company is using this company to make payments to themselves. To do this, we determined that the company Sweet Things has sequential invoice numbers indicating that they only do business with us and nobody else, which is why we only see this is the only company we see with these sequential numbers. Third test performed in the accounts payable section was the double payment test. This test is to determine if there was any double payments made through certain purchase orders, being that if the same invoice is used for the same purchase order. In this case, we found it with two vendors, Flora's Flour and Don's Dairy. You can see there's certain purchase orders, such as purchase order 11231 that has two of the same invoices. Same thing with purchase order 16590 with four. This can be a major problem because while it can be error, in terms of invoice numbering, this could also be the company trying to defraud us, trying to have us make double payments to these certain purchase orders. And then finally, the address test. The address test is more involved with the employees to determine if any vendors that the company works with has the same address as an employee. And the reason we do this is to see if the risk of an employee making fictitious payments to this vendor with the same address, and in that process, skimming their own pockets, in which this case we see to the two employee of Don Lazer and Courtney Willis have the same address as certain vendors in the company.
Moving on to employee expenses, our analysis revealed severe control overrides. We conducted a requester approver test, and we found employees approving their own expense reports. Specifically, Tess Bolin approved multiple of her own transactions, totaling $2,640.40. Additionally, Stephen Jones approved $286.25 of his own expenses. We also saw some vendor violations. Tyler Flournoy was flagged for violations involving an Amex corporate card. And we looked for duplicate expense reimbursements, finding that Tess Bolin submitted reports and was reimbursed multiple times for the same air travel expenses across different states. We also conducted an analysis of the general ledger, and we examined the journal entries for the 2021 fiscal year. In doing so, we found the following issues. On a Sunday, we found a transaction for $562.78. Obviously, something that's not allowed because it was conducted on a non-business day. Furthermore, several large entries were posted in the middle of the night, including a $20,517.02 entry posted at 1:12 a.m. We conducted a net zero test in a double-sided accounting system. All entries must net to zero. We found unbalanced journal entries resulting in a net dollar amount of $27. In a segregation of duties test, we found quite alarming instances where the same employee was both posting and approving journal entries. which is a pretty great risk for fraud. Our employee Ian Sims violated this control on multiple entries, including amounts of $1,405.91 and $502.30. Lastly, we found employees who do not work in accounting posting to the ledger. Daniel Spencer and Megan Gonzalez, who are both full-time IT employees, were found posting journal entries.
Now I want to walk you through the three biggest issues we uncovered in our fraud analysis of Julia's cookies, starting with the shell company problem. The first red flag we found was the sequential numbered invoices combined with a vendor sharing the same address as an employee. These are both classic warning signs of a shell company or a fake business set up to funnel money out of the company. What makes these especially dangerous is that they can go completely undetected for a long time, with a high likelihood of asset misappropriation. Next, I want to focus on the kickback test. We found a single employee approving all payments to one specific vendor. That employee could easily be approving inflated or unnecessary payments for personal gain, which is textbook collusion and a major fraud risk. The third thing I want to focus on is the lack of segregation of duties. This means that one person is controlling multiple steps of the same financial process and they are not being checked. For example, the same person is both posting and approving journal entries or requesting and approving their own expenses. Without separation, there's very little stopping someone from committing or concealing fraud. These three issues represent the highest risk areas we found, and they lead directly into the recommendations you'll hear about next.
Thank you, Ollie. So now we're going to move on to our recommendations for Julia's Cookies. The first recommendation is a general one. We believe that Julia's Cookies should implement more frequent reviews of files to ensure that there are no fake addresses, duplicate invoices, or inappropriate vendor-employee relationships. All three of these were found during our audit, and we believe that a more frequent review of the files in the ERP system can allow these anomalies and red flags to be caught and dealt with earlier. The next is a more robust vendor background check system to determine if they are real and not shell companies. During our audit, we found a vendor that was very likely to be a shell company, and this is cause for concern as it shows that there weren't controls to actually see if these vendors were real or not. So we recommend that Julia's Cookies do things like looking at addresses, phone numbers, public records, websites, and online map data to ensure that these companies have an address, maybe a physical storefront that you can see a picture of. The phone number doesn't correspond to an employee phone number. The address isn't just a PO box. Things that can allow you to determine that this is a real vendor and in fact, not a shell company. Our next recommendation is more frequent reconciliation of the general ledger. During our audit, we found that there are multiple transactions on the general ledger that had a high risk of fraud, as they were posted outside of business hours, non-business days, and had large amounts. We believe that more frequent reconciliations can help detect these transactions earlier. And finally, our last recommendation is to install systems to automatically flag incorrect documentation or sequential information. Some of this could be things to where if information is input incorrectly, such as if a transaction doesn't balance, the debit and credit doesn't balance, or the approver ID is the same as the poster ID, the transaction cannot be posted, or it requires independent approval to post if there's a reason that needs to happen. And also there should be systems to flag these things if they do happen, if they do somehow get bypassed, to make sure that management can clearly see, hey, there was sequential invoices that likely indicate a shell company, or there were transactions that the information was not posted correctly. So we believe that both preventative and detective controls should be installed in order to flag these anomalies in the data. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, and enjoy the rest of your day.